Check black first cause it's brilliant. People talk too much. Say yes. Remain on code, follow the spirit. When the going gets tough, it's time for resilience. Say less. A fight inherited, no turning back. We're on our way. Tune into Eve at the end of your day.
Welcome back, everybody. Happy Sunday. Today is Sunday, April 13. I'm Eve, and I guess I'm doing things just a little different today. I am not going to double stream on my channels as much as I'm going to, the live today is specifically geared for the minis. Well, I guess most of my Sunday lives are like that, right? But, well, since I've already kind of touched this topic on the main channel, no need to double down in this regard. So, okay, I hope you guys are ready because today for Sunday school, we're going to have somewhat of a history lesson. If I can get my screens to work with me, then we can get started with our presentation. Again, happy Sunday. If this is your first time joining us, we do this on Sundays, talking about our story, where we are, what we're supposed to be doing. You're gonna have to excuse the puppy in the background. She's doing her job, and guard dogs are supposed to make noise when they hear things. So that's what you hear. Okay. Without further ado, here we go. Okay, so welcome to Virginia. We are going to start with Virginia because it is my state. It's the state that I've got the most information about, at least in a real way. I live here. I'm from here, and I teach the youth here in this state. So I figured it was probably a good state to start with. Just some basic information if you didn't know about Virginia, our capital, how many people are here. There's a bunch of states and territories, but when you think about how big our country is and how many people are here, well, there's a lot more people in Virginia than you might have expected. Over 8 million. And every day we're finding out that there are more and more people here in Virginia than are supposed to be here. I was watching I don't want to call it an ICE raid, but I was watching a couple of clips of ICE officers trying to do wellness checks on people, and a lot of missing children have ended up in Virginia. They say that the migrant children, the children who've been making this journey to get to America, the land of the great things, they get here and then they get lost in the system, outside of the system, or just with people who might be a little sketch, people you might not have given them to anyway. So President Trump has been saying that he is going to do something about these missing children, finding them. So I think over 900 children were listed to, I guess they're supposed to be here in Virginia, but they are having a time finding them. Today, our show, Making America Great Again, the colony that paved the way. If you didn't know, Virginia is the first colony, not the first state, but the first colony. There are some things that have happened here in Virginia, things that you can't forget if you're going to try to put yourself in an appropriate light with regards to where you are and who you are. Things like copper colored. You've got people who would describe the native people as more racially ambiguous right now, or I guess at a bare minimum, you might look at someone who classifies themselves as a Native American and say they look Hispanic or Spanish or Mexican, Puerto Rican. They look like a mixture of something. You can't quite put your finger on it, can't quite figure it out, but they aren't resembling the people that the colonizers, the original invaders, yet these people that they came across. Like, where are those people, those copper colored people? In 1600s, you've got the white man saying that this land was full of copper colored people, uh, indigenous to the land. But in 2025, those indigenous people, at least the ones who get to claim their native ancestry, they don't look the same. You've got Bacon's Rebellion and the French and Indian Wars, and while these things happen in a bigger area than you would classify Virginia today, back in the day, in like George Washington time, so a few hundred years ago, Virginia actually took up a larger piece of real estate on the map. It was a lot larger than what you see today. Um, the negotiations, treaties, and just paperwork that has made America great, it all starts back then, back when the native people were unawares to why these people were coming here and trying to do these things. As much as Virginia's history, there there was a European influence here in this area prior to the English's colony of Virginia, and that would be the Spanish. But just like I don't have them on your little never forget, it's very easy to forget because it didn't make it. The Spanish colony in Virginia ended up getting overrun by the native people at that time, and then what 70 years later, so in 1500s, you've got the Spanish trying to colonize the area that is Virginia and being unsuccessful. They tried to do the missionary thing, convert all of the savages to Christianity, and then they will give us the land. The English, they came almost 100 years later, and their approach was a little different, even though they still wanted to colonize or usurp, take over, invade the land. They wanted the land, didn't really want the people, until they realized that they could use the people to work the land, because they don't know how to work the land. They couldn't work the land. Actually, the English's first attempt at making it here in the great land that is America today, it fizzled out. It didn't work either. So Spain's first attempt didn't work. England's first attempt also didn't work, and they actually went a step further. Uh, if you were to look up the Great Starvation, you might find that Jamestown, the first colony, had a little bit of cannibalism going on. Times were so hard, the winters were so harsh, the environment was so unforgiving that the people, maybe from 500 people to 50 people, that's how many people get to make it to the next year. And if there were no reinforcements, they probably wouldn't have made it. But add the reinforcements, add the fact that you've got native people helping, assisting. And because I wasn't there at the time, I can only assume. And yes, I know I could probably try to read somebody's text about what was said about the feelings. I just don't know if I would believe some people and how they said some people felt. For example, George Washington had slaves. He had a bunch of enslaved people. And these enslaved people, uh, they got to dress very dignified. They got to look like they were doing more than what it was they were doing, because George Washington liked the appearances. He liked to keep up the pretense of things being elegant, eloquent. So while he was participating in the barbarism and the violence that is chattel slavery, he didn't want it to look like that. If you juxtapose him with other people who had slaves or uh, black people enslaved, you would find that some plantations had heads on spikes lining the path. You know, if you can traumatize a person, then they might not fight back. Or if you let them think that you're bigger than what you are, then again, maybe they won't fight back. You guys have all seen the movie The Wizard of Oz. The wizard was but a little man behind a curtain, but until people find out that he is but a man, and a little man at that, yet people thought that he was big and bad and great and powerful and mighty. And you must never forget that sometimes the people telling the stories are not telling the story because it benefits you. No, they're telling the story so that it benefits them. They want you to never forget their reign of terror, because then, well, maybe you don't fight back. Maybe you think the reign was so long, so vast, so intense that, well, a foolish people would try to fight back. You flash forward into 2025 and you find that not only has Black America not stopped fighting, but our fight has made people want to come here. Our fight uh, has gone for years. And here in this state, here in my state, you've got original fights. Gabriel Prosser, a fight that didn't quite make it out the door. Nat Turner, a fight that lasted longer than they wanted it to last. And then, well, I already told you about the cannibalism of it all. The Daughters of the Confederacy. And this is where you've got white people fighting back against justice. The South loses the Civil War and things are supposed to start making sense for Black people, but never forget that there were white women in charge of things. And these women said that they wanted to make sure that you never forgot where you were and who you were to them. So they create these monuments, they write these books. These books get circulated in schools and libraries, and these monuments get attention and notoriety. And then people in 2025 feel some kind of way about the monument being removed from a public space. A monument that might be, oh, I don't know, honoring a Confederate general, soldier, or person who participated in the, again, barbarism, the violence against the native Blacks who were here. Never forget that from these white women, you've got white men like Walter Plecker, who made it his life's mission to erase Black people from our story, the American story, that is. You know, when you've got the papers to back up your land claim, then people take you more seriously. But what if there were a situation where you don't have the papers to back up your land claim? You've got the stories, you've got the memories. People pass down the traditions and the names and the words, and you get all of that, but you don't have the paperwork to back it up. What do you do then? Well, some people would rather you just say, that's just in the past. What can we do about it now? Oh, I was never a slave, and these people existing today were never slave owners. So we should just move forward. That's how we can make America great again, by putting things into perspective and putting the priority where it's supposed to be. But I can't ever forget that here in Virginia, you had people fighting for interracial sexual access. And what does that mean? Well, like Mr. Fuller teaches us, sex is anything that happens between a man and a woman. But no, let's go a little bit further and use the secular understanding of sex. It's when a man and a woman do things that make babies. And in Virginia, Loving v. Virginia was a court case that changed everything. So many people were tired of fighting that these symbolic winds, winds that go nowhere, and winds that nobody asked for, is the hill that they decided that they wanted to lay down and die. That is because interracial sexual access have people forgotten that there are slave owners, descendants of slave owners, and they're here because they laid with the person that they said wasn't a person. You've got history books writing about Thomas Jefferson and Sally and how she was in love with him and he was in love with her, but how? How can a person who has no authority over themselves choose to love someone who has the authority over them? At best, it is an abusive situation. At worst, it is a lie. People are trying to lie to us because the truth is that we've never stopped fighting. If the story were told that Thomas Jefferson had an enslaved girl named Sally and he forced her to be with him because he had issues and he was making connections that weren't there and he were having the mental hiccup, then maybe people wouldn't be looking at Thomas Jefferson as a thought leader, let alone someone who should be running things or in charge of things. You've got people moving all over the country at this time because they are very confused and concerned about what's supposed to be going on. They're very confused about their place, their position here in the country. I find that while we might be a people who've been migrating in between the boundaries that is our country, we have some constants. For example, here in Virginia, this year, the governor's election is between two women. We've got a melanated woman and a white woman. We have an American woman and a foreign born woman. But that is interesting because the colony that paved the way for all of what it is that you enjoy and experience today, well, they've got a decision to make. And no, we're not a colony anymore. We are a state. It did take a little while for us to become a state. And if you're a little bit older, maybe you'll join my show tonight because where did the confidence go? The original colonizers have lost their confidence, but maybe we see little bits and pieces peeking through when we take a moment to look at it. The white woman on your screen, Abigail Spanberg, is the American woman who is vying for the seat of governor of Virginia. On your screen, you also have Winsome Sears, is a Jamaican-born immigrant who also wants to be the governor of Virginia. And to me, I'm just wondering, why does a person who's not from here want to do things for the people that are from here? Is it possible that a person can have dual allegiance? Or is that a fairy tale that we tell ourselves because it's easier than the truth? If the truth is that there is no such thing as a dual allegiance, and that's why interracial sexual access is a farce, and that's why the illusion of inclusion will have everybody fighting things that don't make sense. Does it make sense that a foreign-born person would put America first? Does it make sense that a white woman would put Black America first? These are questions that I have as a Virginian who is a registered Democrat and is looking at every election that I can vote in because our tangibles are important. You can't be a person who sits on the couch and says that they voted for the couch and they know that there is nobody out there speaking to Black people if you don't do the research. The research includes knowing who's running, when they're running, why they're running, their platforms, their policies, and what's important to them. On a face value, you might be a person who comes from people who look for the Black person and then vote for that person. I would urge and argue that that time has passed. The first black is not something that we should be vying for. It's not something we should be trying to attain. If Barack Obama, being the first quote unquote black president, didn't move you off of and away from that argument, that symbolic victory, I don't know what will. The man that everybody told us was going to change things for us, and then got into the biggest position of power that you can get into here in this country, at least the ones that they talk about, not the shadow government stuff, but just the, well, the president is the commander in chief and in charge of things here. So if you can be the first black president and not do anything for black people, then I think that we need to be past the first black. We need to get to the person who's going to do something for the blacks first. And for what it's worth, Abigail seems to be that person. I've never seen her speaking about reparations, but I have seen Winsome speaking about reparations, and Mrs. Sears is a person who believes and feels like America should move on. She is the Republican in this race, and it is very funny to me that the first black is not an American, or if she ends up winning the governor role, the governor's election. But Virginia will have the first woman governor for our state. But at what cost? Will we be able to be a people who can take away the symbolic victories and do something that makes sense? Or will we be a people who get stuck on stupid because we like to see ourselves in positions of power and never mind the fact that we're actually not getting anything from these people in positions of power, but that we get to see ourselves in these positions of power? So, in conclusion, and I know this was kind of short today, but in conclusion, I hope that, as we learn about our states, because this is a little bit of a series, I guess, we're going to be talking about another state next week. But as we learn about our states and the lands that we come from and how we've paved the way for people to come here today, that we reclaim our position, our rightful place here on this land, because it is through us that America can be great. We have already shown the world our greatness, and they've already used us for our greatness. I think it's past time for us to use us, don't you think?
Just eat. Just eat.